Hello, everyone. Trying something new out this morning. Let's see how that works. Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Good. How are you, Rita?
Good. Okay, let's see. I know we were having some techie issues. Let me share this to our group. How is everyone doing today? We are day 2 on prep for Wave Week. And I think from what I've heard, there's been a lot of really great takeaways now already. So, okay, we've got that. Everything's sharing, everything's posting. So, welcome, day 2. This session, we're going to be talking about all of goals, numbers, things that we should be thinking about for 2022. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sorry, my AirPods took over again.
Oh,
I'm taking them off. I think it's because they're connecting to either my phone or my laptop. So we'll just do without those.
okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. So I was just welcoming you here to Prep for Wave Week, but then also wanted to get a quick intro from yourself on talking about numbers and goals, what your background is before we get started in the nitty gritty today.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephanie Cannon. And so I am a travel advisor. I've been in the industry for 15 years now. Yay, right? 15 years. I know you just had an anniversary, Rita. So
Yep,
congratulations
11
on
years.
that one.
Thank
Yay.
you.
And so before I moved into the travel industry, I was in the finance world for many, many years, starting in public accounting. I have a CPA license. I'll just put the caveat out there. I no longer practice, but I still keep the license. It's one of those that's difficult to get, and you don't want to let go of it once you have it.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I think that's
Yeah,
really
and
useful to have.
exactly. And then once I left public accounting, I moved to the corporate world where I did planning and budgeting for a major utility on the East Coast.
Okay. Wow. That is very different than what we
Yeah.
do in travel.
Right?
All right. So, and you've had so many like really great and useful workshops, got some amazing stuff coming down the pipeline. But when we start thinking about wave season 2022, what are some goals that we should be kind of like starting to think about, put down to paper at this moment?
Yeah, I think some of the biggest ones are sales goals. So
Okay.
that you kind of play with some scenarios and see what feels best, because we don't know what wave season's going to look like. But if we have some goals on paper
Hmm.
and kind of in front of us to remind us like what we're doing and even why we're doing it, then it will keep us focused and on track. Versus, I feel a lot of times when people don't have goals, there's various things that happens. One, they lose focus, and we're only
Hmm.
focusing on what I call the fire drills at hand, like
Right.
what's really sitting in front of us, what's coming into our inbox, and those kind of things, and we get off track. And
Hmm.
then we get 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, and we wonder, wait a minute, this isn't what I was going for in terms of revenue and how much I can pay myself and all of those things. So, sales goals is a big one, even expenses, controlling and being really intentional about what we spend money on so
Hmm.
that we have more left for us at the end of the day.
Right. Right. Because that's, I mean, we're all in the business to make money, not, well, I would say, yeah, to make money and to pay off our fun travels, but really to be making money because I feel like that's a lot of work to just be traveling for lower costs.
Yes, agree.
So what can we do to keep track of these goals? Because I think that's another thing. Like I can say like I want a $1 million sales revenue year, which will translate into maybe $100,000 worth of profit. Which then you got to break it down all the expenses as well. Like it's kind of like a big funnel of things. It's not just you need to have one goal. There's multiple goals. So how do we track those?
Yeah, so the best way really is to put some thought and effort into actually planning the goals. And
Mhm.
I like to reverse engineer everything I do because
Okay.
I'm starting with where I want to be. And then I work backwards to figure out what it's going to take to get me there. And
Mhm.
over a 12-month period, it can be, you know, probably a little overwhelming because you're like, well, wait a minute, I've got whole 12 months to do this. Like, why do I need to break this down so much? But really, if you know what your end goal is, and it, for so many advisors, it's very, very different. It could be that they want to pay themselves a certain amount, or they want to fund their fun money, those
Yeah.
kind of things. Maybe like me, we have a child that's a couple years away from going to college. So
Mhm.
I want to get a little extra in her college fund each year. So we just had to figure out why we're doing it and then determine what it takes to reach that and work backwards. And when you look at profit, we all know, and I call it the calculation, the equation, whatever term you want to use, but revenue, or the income that we bring into our business less our expenses, gives us our profit. So
Mhm.
if we start with what our profit is and work backwards, for most of us, it's pretty easy to determine the expenses we typically have or plan to have, and then gross that up, add those two numbers together to figure out your revenue. And then that, to me, is where the more difficult part comes in.
Mhm.
We're having to break that revenue down into what will it take to come up with that number, in combination of if you charge service fees, or if you specialize in a certain destination or a certain type of travel. So working backwards now into the marketing of it so that you can sell that, which kind of crosses the line, with the financial piece. To me, they mesh together. But
Mhm.
if you don't have the numbers that you're going for, then it's really hard for you to determine your marketing plan to
Right.
meet your objectives.
Right. So when kind of trying to get some definitions, because we're talking a lot of words that aren't typically used in the travel industry, I guess. So what specifically is the difference between profit and revenue?
Okay, so revenue is the money that you have coming in from your commissions, your fees, any other type of income, not loans, not personal money that you may put into your business. It's what gets shown on your income tax as that revenue line that, starts at the very top of your tax return.
Okay.
Profit is what you end up with on paper after you've deducted all of your expenses.
Okay. And
So,
then sales.
so, so in our world, it's a little bit different because of the timing, and it's really just a timing issue. So we can sell something, which means we've booked a certain trip, say in January, but our clients don't travel till September, October,
Mhm.
and after that, or depending on how you're set up through hosted, not hosted, will determine when that commission comes in.
Mhm.
So sales and commission are two different things, and a lot of people equate them as the same. And terminology wise, they could be, but
Yeah.
typically when we make a sale, at least for those who are hosted and not processing their own credit cards, so that money is not coming into our business in full. We
Mhm.
just we just receive the commission piece of it. But you want to track your sales because that helps you determine like what gives you the most commission.
Right, right. Because that I'm thinking too, even breaking down a little bit more. So if we're talking about like this is our revenue pie, a piece of that revenue goes to our income, a piece of that goes to expenses, um, a piece of that will go to taxes. So is there kind of like a formula, like when people are starting to plan their numbers out, they should know, because I know a lot of people, the big goal is really to have, or a popular goal is to have $100,000 coming into you every year.
Mhm.
But just because $100 or $100,000 comes into you doesn't mean it's actually going to you. So when we're
Correct.
thinking about profit and breaking that up and where it goes to, kind of Like, are there percentages? Like 50% is what the owners share, or however that goes in the accounting world.
There really isn't. I mean,
Okay.
because our businesses are so different from like me, a solopreneur, versus somebody who has a team of ICs
Right.
or somebody who has a storefront. Like it's very different based on your business model, but
Mhm.
we can simplify it by just doing some math. So at the end of the day, calculate or pick the number that you want to have for yourself. When
Okay.
it's all said and done, then figure out, okay, now here's my expenses that I know I'm going to have.
Mhm.
And then you can even predict a little bit about taxes. I worked in the tax world for so many years, but when people only focus on saving money on taxes, then that's what they're focused on. They're not focused on growing their business and increasing their revenue and having more money
Mm.
at the end of the day. So
Okay.
taxes is a piece of that. Yes, I'm not saying we shouldn't account for it, but when we solely make everything we do about saving money on taxes, then I think we're missing a huge piece.
Right.
Little segue there on the tax piece. But when you take what you want to end up with plus your expenses, then, and you can include taxes in that, like, then that is your commission goal or your
Okay.
commission and fees goal for the year. And now we have to take that the next step up to figure out how do we make the sales so that the commission that we receive can give us enough to pay our expenses and pay ourselves and plan for the future.
Right, right, and it sounds like it's kind of like a balancing act too, like, you need to
Mhm.
have one number, because, and I feel like we're, again, like what you said, we are so unique in that sales does not mean commission slash revenue that is paid to us. So even if we want to say we want to make 100,000, well, what's your commission threshold?
Yeah.
Because, and I feel like 100,000 is kind of like the easiest to go to, because I feel like an average is probably 10% commission, which means you need $1 million in sales. So what does $1 million in sales look like in your business? But
Right.
it's kind of like, but what are your expenses? So yeah, it's I just see like this balancing being like teeter tottering back and forth with all the complications that I'm so glad that you're here and that you're speaking about these types of topics, because people need to know about this, because this is not like, it's uncomfortable in a sense, right?
It is. And what I found too, and I thought about this a lot. I'm like, why do people just not want to talk about money in their business?
Hmm.
And some of it could come from like what we learned when we were younger. And I go back and I think about what my parents would say. And even when I first started working out of college, my dad was a big thing. Nobody needs to know how much you make. Nobody should
Hmm.
know what your salary is. Like it was taboo to talk
Right.
about it. So nobody talked about it. But how
Hmm.
do you learn how to get better if you don't talk about it? And
Right.
in what I do, advisors don't have to share their individual numbers. Like if they're not comfortable, that's fine. But you can only help somebody so much and to get so far if you don't know what those numbers are.
Right.
Because there could be a huge piece that you're not seeing that somebody else can see.
Hmm.
And that's the only way that we grow. But
Right.
going back to what you said, it kind of confusing about sales and commission. So maybe people think about it like, okay, so you make your sales, and that's what you're actually booking. So, and they're booked during certain months or whatever, and you keep track of it that way. But then
Hmm.
your commission, maybe it's your sales based on when people travel. So you can look at it in two different ways. And overall, it'll balance out in the end over time. But the
Right.
timing of those two is different.
Hmm.
And I think that might be a better way for people to kind of break it up because it's not linear.
No.
We don't make a sale and collect the money tomorrow.
Right.
Typically.
Right.
So,
I
yeah, and I think
remember I remember hearing something about that, like sales and marketing is not linear. You're always, I feel, trained to, like, if you do one action, then this is the reaction, but that's not necessarily what happens in
No.
the business.
And not in our world for sure, because it's
Mhm.
commission based mostly. Now,
Right.
if you add fees in there, typically your fees are charged and you collect them at the same time. So
Yeah.
that one's a little more straightforward, at least on the
Mhm.
timing side of it. But yeah, the commissions can get a little tricky.
Okay. So if I'm thinking, because right now there's that meme like with the guy and there's all the numbers like floating around. So instead of having the numbers floating around in our heads, are what tools can we be using to kind of like put them down, keep track of them, and always have them kind of like in our minds?
So what I like to do, well, one, I'm a spreadsheet person, so everything goes in a spreadsheet, right? Because when we document, then we pay more attention, we retain it more, we
Mhm.
have a higher chance of meeting our goals when it's actually written down. So it doesn't have to be a spreadsheet. It could be in a Word document, on a piece of paper, whatever is easier for, the person to use. I just happen to like spreadsheets because I can
Mhm.
do the math in there really quickly. I don't have to think, I don't have to pull out my calculator, like I can just make my own little formulas. Um,
Yeah.
but what I've been playing with for 2022 is actually having a dashboard. So it would be a summary sheet as part of my workbook of spreadsheets. So you
Okay.
have tabs in your files, and then the summary one is where it just pulls all that data forward so I can see it in summary fashion versus detailed listing of what I call the ones and zeros of the digital world that mean like nothing when you look at it like that.
Right.
So dashboards are really good. And then another thing that people can try if they want, because we do these vision boards. So create yourself an electronic vision board in Canva or whatever you want to do, and make it be your screen picture on your computer. So you open it every day when you log in, and it's like it's there. It's front and center. Like you can't avoid it because you're looking
Yes.
at it all day long.
Oh, I love that idea. I have a picture of my family on a recent trip, and I'm like, "Oh, family, I think you're gonna be replaced soon." But I think that is what is kind of, like, needed, though, that we need to have it kind of in our faces so that it's always top of mind,
Yes.
because I don't know about anybody else, but I know about myself, if I'm not constantly thinking about something, I'm kind of like the butterfly jumping around like, "Oh, yes," and I was talking about this a little bit yesterday. It's kind of like going down the rabbit hole that you're supposed to be checking emails, but then you find one email and it says green, and you think, oh, green grass. I need to mow my lawn, or like it takes you just down so many different trails. How often should we be reviewing these numbers and goals?
Okay, so you're talking to a financial person. So I would love to have advisors reviewing them at least monthly,
Okay.
on a monthly basis, but quarterly at a minimum, because I feel, and I've been through a lot of these goal planning workshops, and I've even done this myself, because we lose focus, right? We focus on getting more sales, getting more bookings, but we don't go back to our goals. So we would set our goals for the year and literally not open the file till 12 months later. And you're like, oh, I didn't meet any of these goals. What happened? So when you do it quarterly, you can see where you are in comparison, but not just that, to see if anything needs to be adjusted.
Hmm.
Because, this isn't like a set it and forget it kind of thing. These are fluid, and things change, or even our passions change, or what we want to focus on changes. So our goals need to change with us.
Hmm.
So quarterly at best.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And when we're making those big goals too, I had always heard kind of like to focus on what you want to be selling. So if you love selling river cruises, for example, and a typical couple is a $10,000 sale,
Mhm.
or I'm just putting numbers out there now. Is a $10,000 sale, so it'll be about a $3,000 commission. It's kind of like those are the breakdowns that need to happen. So how many of those do you need to sell?
Oh no.
Oh, I think we froze up for a little bit
Yeah,
there.
I think you're back.
Kind of like did a little loop-de-loop thing.
Yeah.
So, I was just saying, like, with that river cruise example, is that kind of how is that part of, like, the reverse engineering that you're talking about when we talk about creating goals for 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
But even taking it a step further, so and I don't want to like spoil anything, but this is kind of what I have a goal planning workshop coming up in December. So this is exactly what we're doing, but we
Okay.
have to know certain numbers first to be able
Mhm.
to get there and
Right.
reverse engineer everything to break down a sales plan. And when I say a sales plan, like, so how many, what's your target number of river cruise bookings? What's your target number of all inclusives or, FITs to Europe or South Pacific, whatever it is you specialize in. And then once we know what our average commission is on that, we can calculate how many we need to meet the number, but then also go back one step further. Like, so how many people do we need on our list that are interested in those to meet that number
Yes.
based on our conversion rates and our list growth rate and all of that? And that will lead us to the start of our marketing plan.
Oh, are you going over all of that stuff in your workshop? Okay, I'm going to if you have any questions, please go ahead and pop them in the comment box. I'm going to share a link that if you want to stay tuned to everything Stephanie's going to be putting out, because I think that planning workshop is going to be super, super valuable. It's there. If you want, just go ahead and screenshot it. Can you tell us a little bit more about this planning workshop when it's happening?
Yeah, so the dates I have set as of now are December 9th and 10th. And it's not full days, they're partial days, but I split them up because I think mentally it might be a little overwhelming for some people. So we want to ease into some things, let some things settle, for a few hours before you jump into the next piece of it. But
Mhm.
the end result is literally like I was talking about the dashboards, for them to have a dashboard that they can see what their revenue goals are. And that's what I mean, sales goals. So the timing of this is going to look a little different. And we'll talk about that in the workshop of
Mhm.
when the sale versus commission comes in. But we have to pick something, right? To
Right,
be
right.
able to keep it consistent throughout, but also play with scenarios. So, like, how many bookings a month do you need? At what commission rate or commissionable sale to see where you want to end up? And then you can play with some of those numbers in the scenario planners. And then
Mhm.
in the end, that's what we'll use to come up with a detailed sales plan, which is what you're talking about, knowing how many river cruise bookings you need, how many of this of something else that you need in order to meet your revenue goals for the
Mhm.
year.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds wonderful. And I have participated in similar ones not within the industry, so I think it's going to be a very interesting take for something we're from someone who is in the industry but also has that financial background. A question came in from Angela. What are your thoughts on the free bookkeeping systems like Wave?
Yeah, so I haven't tried Wave yet. I'm a diehard QuickBooks fan, but I know everybody doesn't want to use QuickBooks or invest in QuickBooks, and maybe it seems a little bit overwhelming. So it is on my list to compare not just Wave, but there's FreshBooks and Zero, along with QuickBooks Desktop and Online, to
Huh.
do kind of a comparison. So I am working on a bookkeeping course, but it won't be out till sometime early next year.
Uh-huh.
And that was one of the things I was going to put in there to help people understand or make the determination on which system fits their business model best based on where they currently are.
Mhm. Okay. That I hadn't heard of those. I've heard of Wave apps, but I've heard of Wave apps as a invoicing system, so I didn't even know that it could do bookkeeping. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I know Wave. You can do invoicing, and that's when you pay for Wave. Is your if you're making doing certain transactions where you charge,
Okay.
which, for advisors, we don't use that to process fees. Most people will use PayPal or Square or take it through their host. however, they're set up. So you
Right.
wouldn't need that piece. I just want to see how robust Wave is to be able
Mhm.
to give you um, the data out at the end that really means something versus
Mhm.
just using it as a bookkeeping tool.
Okay. That's really interesting because I know that, Wave apps, the invoicing, I don't think a lot of people use that for invoicing because usually it's one of our CRMs, like you can do Travel Joy, Tess, Planet Easy is one of the newer ones that's coming
Mhm.
on.
Yeah, I think that's different. Like you don't want to do that kind of invoicing through your bookkeeping system
Mhm.
unless you're charging credit cards in-house.
Okay.
So I think that's something different. Where the ones with Travel Joy, Test, you're looking at just capturing the credit card details and processing them through the supplier or tour operator manually
Mhm.
versus charging them directly from your business.
Right, right. Because I was talking in study hall yesterday about numbers wise, that one of the methods that I use is I kind of like take the information from Travel Joy and then I go on my Stripe account to charge a fee.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. Because are you finding any of these CRMs more helpful in other way or in ways that maybe other ones aren't as far as tracking goals and numbers?
So the only CRM that I use is Client Ease because that's what my host requires.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's good in order to run a report to be able to see what you already have on the books. Most likely if it's part of your process, you do the booking, you record it in your CRM so that it's captured and you know that the commission is supposed to come to you, or at least your host knows, and you
Right.
can run reports based on that. But other than that, I mean, I don't think there's any more in there per se.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, they don't make a true robust system. And I was talking about this. I'm trying to remember where I was talking about it. But to have a system that I think would be ideal for everybody, it would cost way too much money to design and create it, which is why it doesn't
Oh,
exist. In our
okay.
industry, it would be overcomplicated. I mean, you can use QuickBooks to do all this, but it's so overcomplicated. And I don't think it's necessary
Mhm.
to do that kind of tracking where you use invoicing within QuickBooks to record every new booking you have and capture the sale and the commission. And when money comes in against it, it's just a never ending administrative nightmare. It's like, wait a minute, do I really need to do all this? Like, what is this going to help me with when I can just track it on a spreadsheet and
Right.
cut it periodically and save so much time?
Right, right, and when we start thinking about kind of outsourcing some tasks, I feel like accounting might be one of the first things to outsource. How can someone tell that they might be ready to outsource that to somebody else?
So one of the first criteria I would look at is, do you understand it yourself? Because you are the business owner, the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, like all the CE whatever, and you're the one that's responsible for the finances of your business.
Okay.
So you need to understand it yourself first, then have somebody do the bookkeeping for you. The accounting is a little bit different. There is a difference between bookkeeping and accounting,
Okay.
but for the bookkeeping aspect, if you're just looking for somebody to do data entry,
Mhm.
then you can definitely outsource. There's a lot of people that do that. But the accounting piece, even if you hire a CPA or somebody who just, not certified but still does tax information, they're still not going to help you come up with what you need to run the day-to-day numbers in your business. Like
Mhm.
that's not their job.
Uh-huh.
So you need to understand it yourself before you can even outsource it. Then you know what to look for, where to kind of see if things are going off track
Okay.
versus relying on somebody else to do that for you.
Yeah, yeah, because I was gonna say too, those I feel like those are big things to keep in mind, but is there any time that you should always outsource? Because there's something we were talking yesterday. I was talking with Tom Carpenter
Mm.
about like the S Corp or the LLC to the S Corp. So is that something that an accountant would do or that you should hire out to get done?
So typically when you're talking about business structure from
Mhm.
a tax reporting standpoint, you normally would have a CPA or a lawyer do
Okay.
that initial for you because there's a lot of tax things and legal things that
Okay.
have to be in the agreements, whether you're a member or you're a shareholder. So there's certain things that have to be set up ahead of time.
Mhm.
You would definitely want to rely on a professional to do that part of it
Okay.
so that it's done correctly and you know what you're responsible for, when the filing dates are, like all of those things, because they're very easily missed.
Mhm.
When we start a business, they're like, oh, I just need to sell.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. All the little nuances.
But as far as
Well,
the bookkeeping part of
yeah.
it, so I would say if you're doing enough business and it's taking you more than a few hours a month to keep up with it, you might want to consider hiring somebody to do it for you. Or if you have a VA already, like getting them educated and trained to be able
Mhm.
to record the transactions.
Awesome. That is a really good tip there, especially adding whatever support that you already have, add little tasks and maybe just add a different percentage to the package or however to increase the additional work that they're going to be doing.
Yes.
Well, we are at time. Thank you
You
so much, Stephanie, for being here. I
are
really
welcome.
appreciate you kind of like breaking down a lot. I took a couple notes myself. There's always something to learn about goals and numbers. So I appreciate you having you here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, I don't think that we could have started a conversation about prepping for wave season without talking about numbers, especially. If you want to make sure that you are on the wait list for the session that Stephanie's going to be having next December, go ahead and just take a screenshot real quick so that you can take this link with you and sign up for her email list. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much for being
All right.
here.
Thank you.
Study hall, if you have purchased study hall, will start in just a few minutes. So I'll see you there. And have a great rest of your day. Our afternoon session starts at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to be talking with our trade associations on how they can help you be successful for this wave season. So thank you, and I'll see you later.